Good morning. Today we are working on 8.3 multiplying and dividing rational expressions. This is part 2 of the video series. So we're going to multiply, divide, and simplify rational expressions. So we're going to start off with some simplifying. Remember that we're looking for factors that are the same on the numerator and denominator. So my numerator is a trinomial where a is 1. We're looking for factors of AC whose sum is b. So we're looking for numbers that multiply to a times c, but add together to give me b. Well, a times c is negative 14, b is 5. So I write down all my factors of 14. Now, which way can these add or subtract to give me 5? And they have to still multiply to negative 14, so one of them has to be negative. So that's actually going to be negative 2 plus 7. So negative 2 plus 7, and my first term is x. Now, if you have terms that are the same on the numerator and denominator, these divide to 1. I don't need to write a fraction if my denominator is 1, but I do need my numerator. And all I have remaining is x minus 2. Question number 2, we're going to simplify again. The numerator, we look at that and we see that it has a GCF of 2. So I'm going to factor out a 2. What's left when I factor out a 2? X plus 3. My denominator, I'm going to factor a trinomial, and a is 1. So when a is 1, I'm looking for numbers that multiply to negative 12. But when I add them together, they give me negative 1. So remember, a, c, but they have to add to b. So I need to multiply to negative 12, but they have to add or subtract together to give me negative 1. What are all my factors of 12? 1, 12, 2, 6, 3, 4. One of those numbers has to be a negative, and when I add them together, they have to give me a negative 1. So 3 minus 4. So positive 3 minus 4. If you have a term that's common on your numerator and denominator, they actually divide to 1. So all that's left on my numerator is a 2. All that's left in my denominator is an x minus 4. So there are two practices that are simplifying them. Now we're going to work on multiplying and dividing. Here is multiplying, which we worked on part 1. So we're going to factor and cancel out like terms on the numerator and denominator because they divide to 1. So my numerator, my first step I'm going to do is I'm going to factor out a 2 because I notice that all of these can be divided by 2. So I'm going to factor out a greatest common factor. I have x squared minus 2x minus 15. My denominator is a difference of squares. If I have a difference of squares, and difference of squares means I can take the square root of both of them and there's a minus sign. The square root of x squared is x. The square root of 25 is 5. And my signs are a sum and a difference. My numerator here, nothing can be taken out. I'm going to leave it alone. Down here, what do I have again? I have another difference of squares. If I can take the square root of the first term, take the square root of the second term, and it's a minus sign in between, that means it's a difference of squares. It factors 2, x and x, because that's the square root of x squared. What's the square root of 16? 4, and it's a sum and a difference. Now I have one more thing I have to factor, and then I'm actually going to rewrite this problem because it is a little bit overwhelming looking at it like this. My numerator up here, my first numerator, I want to factor this to 2 parentheses that multiply to give me negative 15, but add together to give me negative 2. So what are 2 numbers that multiply to 15, negative 15, but add to negative 2? 15, 5, and 3. Now what are my signs? Well, this sign tells me that the bigger number needs to be a negative. Okay, so the 5 is a negative and the 3 is a positive. Negative 5 and 3. Multiply to negative 15, but add together to give me negative 2. My denominator, I'm going to go ahead and bring it over. Okay, I'm going to bring down this. Now, I put the multiply, but I really don't need it, guys. I can just write this next to each other since I am multiplying. Now remember, I can only divide to 1 if the linear factors are exactly the same. So x minus 5 and x minus 5 divide to 1. X plus 5 and x plus 5 divide to 1. Now nothing else is common on the numerator and denominator. So what's left on my numerator? 2 parentheses x plus 3. What's left on my denominator? X plus 4, x minus 4. Okay. Next, we're going to practice a division question. Now, division is going to work exactly like multiplication, but with one step that we have to do first. Whenever you multiply two rational expressions, we're actually going to flip the second fraction and multiply. So we're going to take the reciprocal of the second fraction and multiply. And as I'm doing that, I'm also going to look at if I can factor it. So these two are going to switch places. Okay, and then I'm going to factor at the same time. So I'm going to start with this one right here. Okay, this again is a difference of squares because I can take the square root of both of them. So the factor is 2. X plus 3, x minus 3. I can't do anything to my denominator, so I'm just going to bring it down. Now remember, I'm changing this to a multiply now, and they're going to switch places. So my x plus 3 is now on my denominator. Now my numerator, I'm going to go ahead and factor that out. What are two numbers that multiply to give me negative 8? Because a is 1. So 1 times negative 8. Multiply to negative 8, but add to 2. Well, 4 and 2. 4 and 2 can multiply to 8, and I can combine them somehow to give me a 2. So I'm going to have x and x. I have a 4 and a 2. Don't forget that this one tells you that the bigger number has to be positive. So 4 is positive, 2 is negative. But I'm going to rewrite it here in my numerator because they switch places. Now again, I'm looking for common factors on my numerator and denominator. X plus 3 and x plus 3 divide to 1. X minus 2 and x minus 2 divide to 1. I have nothing left on my denominator. All I have left on my numerator is x minus 3 and x plus 4. I'm going to do one more division and then we'll finish the video there. One more division question. So again, don't forget with division, we're going to flip the second fraction and then we're going to change it to a multiply sign. So first off, I start with my first numerator. Can I factor anything out? Yes, I can factor out a 3. My denominator, a is 1. So what multiplies to negative 10? Multiplies to negative 10, but adds to 3. Multiplies to negative 10, but adds to 3. So I have 10 and 1, 5 and 2. Okay, so it's going to be a 5 and 2. Don't forget, this one tells me, because one of them has to be a negative. This one tells me the bigger number is a positive. Change it to multiply. Flip the second fraction. Now, I'm going to flip it. And notice I just already put the 2 parentheses. What multiplies to A times C? What multiplies to -6 but adds to 1? Okay, multiplies to -6, adds to 1. Well, my factors of 6 are 6 and 1, which can't give me a 1, but 3 and 2 can. This one tells me, because I'm going to have one negative, that the bigger number is positive. So +3, -2. If you have a common term on the numerator and denominator, they divide to 1. Divide to 1. There's nothing else that's common, so whatever I have left is my answer. Hopefully this video gave you guys some practice for multiplying and simplifying, and also showed you guys the one extra step we have to do when it's division. Hope this video helped. Give my video a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channels if you want more math videos, and hopefully this helps you in your math journey.